The sitting is resumed.
Yes, sir. Order number 7, sir. In the name of the Honorable Minister of State in the Ministry of Health and Wellness, to move the second reading of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Amendment Bill 2024.
Honorary Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to move the second reading of this amendment, which on the surface appears to be a very simple amendment, and it is technically, but it will have significant impact and value as we continue to improve and enhance the operations and, of course, the service delivery relative to healthcare services within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And in essence, through this amendment, Mr. Speaker, we are seeking to abolish the post of executive chairman and reestablish the previously and more commonly known post of chief executive officer. So, Mr. Chairman, as I said, on paper, it looks like a simple changing of names and titles, and effectively, that is what it is. But it is another step in a long process towards continuous improvement that we are undertaking within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital as we seek to ensure that its operations, its management structure, and of course, its delivery of healthcare services to the citizens of Barbados is at the level that we want it to be. And of course, the level that all persons at the QH, as I speak to them and interact with them, would desire to be that level of excellence. Now, of course, Mr. Speaker, I don't need to convince you of the importance of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I think that goes without saying. The hospital was established in 1964 and for many years has been providing a range of services to the people of Barbados, from laboratory services through to clinical services, medical services, and assessments, evaluations. Ultimately has been taking care of the health of our nation for decades. It is an institution that is critical to the infrastructure of this country, and all of the associated and connected parts of the healthcare infrastructure and network really lead right back to this, our primary acute care facility. And this institution, Mr. Speaker, oftentimes gets a lot of negative comments or commentary, generally commentary within the Barbadian context. We get a lot of negative commentary on the affairs of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And I would be the first to admit that whilst we are continuing on our journey towards improvement, we are not ignorant of, we are not blind to the fact that there are a number of challenges that we need to continue to address within this particular environment. And as I reflect on the long history that we have within this institution, I would not want, even in this very simple amendment, to leave this chamber without registering for the record and publicly the fact that I applaud the hardworking and dedicated members of staff from the board through to every director, through to every single worker, employee, team member, support staff that is at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I would not want to end this very brief contribution without signaling my complete admiration and applause for the work and the dedication that they continue to demonstrate on a daily basis in the provision of healthcare within this country. And whilst it is not an easy task, it is a task that is very challenging because there are myriad of activities that take place within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And oftentimes we sit and we may want to critique one aspect or another aspect of its operations, but there's a myriad of activities that take place within this institution, thousands of employees, moving parts, all throughout the institution from top to bottom. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that even in the midst of the challenges and the challenging environment that it is, I believe that they need to be commended for the excellent work that they're doing on a daily basis to ensure the good health of not only our people, but even the visitors to our shores. Now, this amendment, changing from the position of executive chairman to the more familiar post of chief executive officer, it really and truly, it speaks to the fact that we are continuing to look at the structures that exist within the institution, and we are adjusting as we go along to ensure that we can correct some of the issues that the QEH has experienced over the years. And it is no secret, we've had shortages relative to supplies, we've had issues relative to equipment, we've had issues relative to internal controls, we've had issues relative to accounting and financial management. We've had projects that have not gone the way that we would want them to have to go. So even as we recognize those challenges, back in 2019, this administration sought about and set about to make the adjustments to the governance structure of the QEH by changing the post of CEO to executive chairman, and therefore allowing that governance position within the board of management to be able to have more direct oversight and operational oversight of the activities at the QEH. And I don't need to convince this chamber nor the people of Barbados about what we'll call now the confirmation and affirmation of what a good decision that would have been at that time. Because just after making that move in 2019 into 2020, we all know what took place. We saw the world go through what it had not experienced in over 100 years. A global pandemic that caused the entire world to reel relative to its health and wellness. So during that 2019 decision and that amendment, we would have created the post of executive chairman, but we didn't stop there. We would have created 2 additional posts as well: chief operations officer and executive director of clinical and diagnostic services. So we rode through the COVID-19 pandemic, and I must at this point in time applaud the leadership of the Ministry of Health at that time. The Right Honorable, I think is most honorable right now, Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Bostet. Didn't ask for permission to mention his name, sir, but I'm saying it in a positive light, so my apologies. And of course, the Cabinet of Barbados, led by our Prime Minister, the Honorable Member for St. Michael North East, the Honorable Mia Moore-Motley, and the entire team at that time that would have been the leadership of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the leadership of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, that would have safely navigated us through what was one of the most challenging health crises that the world has seen, or people alive has seen to date. And therefore, we understood the importance of making sure that we have the correct structures that fit the time. And the structures that fit the time then are not necessarily the structures that fit this time today. So many things would have taken place since the 2019 amendment of the governance structure within the QEH. Many good things that have taken place. We have had the expansion of the A&E department to better accommodate the critical and urgent emergency situations that can take place at any point in time in our country. We have had several wards that were refurbished. Even in 2023, Mr. Speaker, we had wards B4, C9, and C5 that were completely refurbished. We had the entire external facade of the hospital that was repainted, improved the operating theater efficiency. We would have increased the ambulance fleet to 4 ambulances. So we improved and expanded that fleet. We would have introduced, during even that time of COVID, a home delivery service for medications. And of course, we introduced, even during the time of COVID, at the peak of COVID, a help desk that we have chosen to maintain even to this day, that continues to field many of the calls that come from our citizens and helps to redirect them and assign them to the right location and give our citizens a first contact that can give them the guidance that they need when they're experiencing an emergency situation. So having successfully navigated the COVID crisis and going out from that and expanding from that to be able to improve the operational efficiencies and to make several improvements and enhancements to the delivery of services at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, we are now at this point in time the government is of the view that we need to now continue the improvement and enhance the governance and management model within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to now revert to the post of the recreation of the post of Chief Executive Officer, to continue the daily drive towards operational efficiency and service delivery improvement. And whilst we understand that the name of a post is important, we do believe that the greater level of importance should be placed on the persons that will be placed in certain posts and positions. So we've embarked on a process to ensure that we find persons to fill the various managerial positions within the leadership of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital who have the requisite skill set, the requisite qualifications, and most importantly, the requisite real-world experience with leading a healthcare facility of this significance within a cultural context that is Barbados. So, sir, as I begin to close, I have earmarked and pinned a lot of this discussion on continuous improvement. And as a person who has been a part of business for many, many years, having led several businesses and the transformation and the success of those businesses over the years, there's a word that comes to mind, and that word is kaizen, sir. Kaizen is a Japanese word. It comes from Japanese business environments and contexts. And the word basically means continuous improvement or change for the better. And I believe that this amendment, once again, though on the surface being a simple reversion to the post of Chief Executive Officer, I want to frame it within the context of the continuous improvement that is taking place within the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And there will be time, Mr. Speaker, in this House to delve into the operations and a lot of the plans that we have, the strategic plans that we have to continue that improvement in a tangible way so that all of our citizens can feel it and see it. And we will discuss that even as we come into the in next week's session of Parliament. And there will be a time for fulsome debate and disclosures relative to a lot of these strategic plans. But at this point in time, I am satisfied that this amendment, and this government is satisfied that this amendment to revert to and to create the post of Chief Executive Officer is going to give us the structure in management that will help us to improve the operations, the execution of the strategic mandate of the board and of the government at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few words, I beg to move that this amendment be read a second time.
Honourable Member for Christ yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mine will be a very short intervention. I note that the Honourable Member for St. Michael North kept faithful to the long title of this bill when he admitted that the bill seeks to amend a post that had previously existed, I think perhaps 2 years ago, and to return to that position in which it separates the office of Chief Executive Officer from that of Chairman. I think that's what the bill is doing. 2 years ago, when it was changed to pursue individual enfranchisement. And there is a principle in law that legislation should not be personalized. Legislation should always seek to pursue the common good. And you know, sir, that the rule of law embraces the principle that no one is above the law. And if no one is above the law, legislation should never seek to enfranchise an individual. And that's the dilemma that we reach today. That we had 2 posts under the previous legislation. Then it was amended to fuse those posts. The individual has departed, and therefore a new individual comes, and we once again bifurcate the positions, so that it appears as if Parliament is tinkering with the process of legislation. I would just say that recently I've heard around here that sometimes we become too consumed or preoccupied with law. And that is such an appalling statement to make, because we are an institution that passes law. So I don't see, if we are a lawmaking body, how we can accuse each other of being preoccupied with law. That ought to be the primary occupation of this place, to concern itself with law. And the law is that legislation should always seek to promote or pursue the common good. It is not about individual enfranchisement. In colonial times, and I don't use the word colonial as an emotive term, I can speak dispassionately as to that, and to identify colonial times as being factual, as a period prior to independence. And Parliament in those days used to appear to be enfranchising the interests of small groups. A lot of people in Barbados are not aware that the Barbados Cricket Association, for example, I think it is either 1932 or 34, the Barbados Cricket Association is a public body insofar as it was incorporated by legislation. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people believe that it is a private company registered at Corporate Affairs. That's not true. The Barbados Cricket Association is a beneficiary of a previous colonial practice of enfranchising individuals and enfranchising small groups. The law has moved beyond that, and the law concerns itself with the common good. And I am concerned that this legislation departs from the principle of the common good. It is clear that we are using the legislation as an expedience. You have somebody who is qualified for a fuse position, so you change the law for that person. You have another person who may not be qualified, or indeed may not be interested in the fuse position, and you amend the law. That is not, with all due respect, that is not how legislation must be used. That is not an approach to the act, the constitutional act of legislation. So that, let me hasten to add that my intervention has nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do, with the quality nor qualifications of the persons involved. Certainly not the last person, certainly not this person. Has absolutely nothing to do with the quality or the qualifications of those persons. This is a point made in principle, that legislation, I repeat, must always be passed for the common good, and it must never pertain to enfranchising individuals. If it enfranchises individuals, it finds itself in breach of the rule of law, which says that no one is above the law. And anytime, I repeat again, anytime legislation appears to place individual interests above the common good, it is offending against the rule of law. So that, Your Honor, that is my intervention. It is a caution to this Parliament. It is a caution to this Parliament based on principle. And that principle remains that legislation must pertain to the common good. So that having taken that position, I must express opposition to the amendment. And I say again, I do not know the individual for whom this is being done. And while I know the individual for whom it was previously done, it does not express any commentary on the quality nor the qualification of either party. So that, Your Honor, those are my objections in principle to the use of legislation to enfranchise individuals and where there seems to be an abandonment of the principle of the common good. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honorable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support my colleague, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North, and on this legislation, which, as he has indicated, is not mere administration. It is at the very heart of an evolution that the Queen Elizabeth Hospital and the health sector in this country has experienced over the past few years. The fact is that when this Barbados Labour Party government came to service in 2018, we encountered a certain level of degradation, including of institutional capacity in some ways. We saw, and I won't repeat all of the various indicators of decay and decrepitude that had taken hold in a previous Democratic Labour Party administration. We experienced it all. We experienced it all in our homes, in our communities. I need not repeat numbers to reflect that. But what is important to note here is that this government had to have a certain flexibility and level of innovation with the way that we treated to our institutions. This government had to realize that in some cases, of which the Queen Elizabeth Hospital was one example, we needed to make sure that the leadership had a steady hand, as did the executive capacity of the institution. The governance needed to have a steady hand, as did the side that was executing in every area, from accident and emergency, to ambulance service, to obstetrics, to every area of service delivery to the people of Barbados. And so the determination was made at that time and discussed and debated in this honorable place. I'm not sure if on that occasion the honorable member for Christchurch South had managed to come in to ask to be marked present, or had removed his sunglasses enough to be able to read what was, long enough to be able to read what was before him. But that conversation did come to this place. And at that time, it was determined that the leadership that was needed, that was steady, that was needed was one that was steady, It was determined at that time that there were so many existential matters relating to the health and care of Barbadians, not least among them issues like pandemics. Not least among them, and as the honorable member for St. Michael North was speaking, I reflected on the work of the former board of the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, of the former Minister of Health and Wellness in this country. And indeed, we had to make sure that we had all available and suitable resources in place within a governance structure that matched the time. Barbados is a small place. And it is no secret that often we are faced with the fact that the person who is best equipped, who is best placed to deal with both matters of corporate governance and of execution in this case, may be somebody who sits next to us, who lives next to us, who's a member of our family. That's the reality that we deal with. And the fact is that the way that we manage that is we make sure that our corporate governance rules allow us to incorporate things like recusal from sensitive matters, because we, in a country of 270,000 people, the same people that benefit from the governance and policy and program execution are the same people that have to do it. We don't get to have an audience in this country. We have to bring all resources to bear to make sure that we cater to and care for all Barbadians. We now find ourselves in a situation where we have gone a ways, having recovered from COVID in all kinds of ways, where we have gone a ways to stabilize that sector. And we consider that having done so, we can now have a return to normalcy. This is not the only sector that is starting to enjoy that return to normalcy. And so I wanted to add my voice to this for the avoidance of doubt. This is a question of having institutions created and governance mechanisms created that are fit for purpose, that allow us to bring all of our resources to bear. If you look around, Mr. Speaker, I dare say you will find that there are other scenarios in which those who are close to us, who are Barbadians too and have a right to be able to contribute, those who are close to many members, those who are close to many Barbadians, every day, all the time, we rely on and call on their capacity to give back to this country as we should. And so, sir, I support the amendment. I think it is important that it be carried through without any cover or any insinuation of ulterior motives on the part of this government, but simply to say that having steadied the health sector, having steadied the QEH in one capacity, we are ready to go forward with the reform in other ways. And with that, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me thank both honorable members for their contributions. And just to pick up where the honorable member for St. Michael's South Central would have left off, to reiterate that this legislation cannot be couched in a view of individual enfranchisement. In fact, I think that the honorable leader of the opposition, if he were paying attention closely to what I was saying for the entire short presentation that I made, was that this is really about the institution being improved so that the common good of all Barbadians can be enhanced. The entire change in this amendment to the QEH bill really is about ensuring that the people of Barbados can get the best quality care from the institution known as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And that is why we are doing this as a part of the continuous improvement to the institution. We recognize that with all organizations, change is important. And if there's one thing that the people of Barbados can identify, can acknowledge, can recognize from the way that this Barbados Little Party runs its affairs is that we are not too big or not afraid to make changes where they are necessary or essential for the good of the people of Barbados. So just as I close, to reiterate and to underscore, this is legislation that is for the common good. This is all that we are trying to do at this point in time, is to ensure that the institution has the best possible chance to deliver on its mandate and to ensure the people of Barbados have the best possible healthcare service possible. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to beg to move that this legislation be read, this bill be read a second time.
Question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Committee or?
I move to-
That you leave, sir? Okay. With that, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honorable House is now in committee.
Clauses 1 to 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 1 to 3 stand part.
Second.
The question is that clauses 1 to 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Clauses 4 to 6.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 4 to 6 stand part.
Second.
The question is that clauses 4 to 6 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you report the passage of one bill in committee to the Speaker. I beg leave for him to sit again.
The question is that I do now report the passing of one bill in committee to His Honor the Speaker. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honourable member, Sir Michael North.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Second.
Question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill now be passed and cited as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Amendment Act 2024.
Question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Second.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until Wednesday at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until Wednesday, the 6th day of March 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.